Hey, welcome to the Wealth Revolution podcast. My name is Chad Free, and my mission is to help people shift their relationship with money from a source that dictates what they do, when they do it, and who they do it with, to a resource that really fuels and is used to pursue their purpose that they're called to. You see, I believe that everybody's created on purpose for a purpose. And I believe true wealth is an abundance of everything that you value. Quite frankly, it's built from the inside out. When you pursue your purpose, I believe that God will unlock that potential inside of you, and you become very present. And you're present with your family, and you're present with your relationships. You are where your feet are, and you're not always chasing what the next deal is. And then when you're that, you're usually profitable, both internally and externally. And then lastly, that's peace. And I believe that that framework really is a good framework to keep you in aligned with what really matters in life. So let's jump in. And today we're going to talk about disrupting the status quo. What is the status quo? What is the status quo? Well, let's talk about that. I believe that we all have been programmed in different ways. And one of the examples that I like to start out with is how many seconds are in a year? Immediately, most people grab their calculator out and they start immediately doing the calculations. Well, how many seconds are in a year? And then I usually just stop them and I say, hey, there's 12 seconds in a year. And I usually get one of those looks, probably like you're doing now. 12 seconds, how do you get that? Well, January 2nd, February 2nd, March 2nd, right? So it's all about perspective. Sometimes you're not allowed to look at the other perspective because you don't know any other option. And those are just some of the things that I want to share with you today. And this is what I do. I disrupt the status quo so you do know all of your options, because it's very important. Because most of the time, there's options out there that are better for your case. One thing that I like to do is compare how people that have money approach their money in comparison to people that want money. And people that have money, they have one thing usually, is that's don't lose my money, Chad. Don't lose it. We've worked really hard for this, so they really want to preserve their money. And that's not just market losses. That's lost dollars that are not being paid attention to, such as taxes, such as debt interest. And so I usually show people exactly how we approach the planning process. And it's not by chasing rates of returns. When you chase rates of returns, you're literally on a hamster wheel all the time. And when you go on vacation, you're thinking about, I got to get back on the hamster wheel. And sometimes your hamster wheel will only go so fast, and you have to look for another hamster wheel for the weekends or in the evenings, because we're taught to just go, 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 go. And we become literally something that is chasing hopium. That's another thing that you'll hear me talk about. I want to break the addiction of hopium, because I think in the financial business, you can be confident, clear, and comfortable in what your money is doing for you. So that's a good question to start off with right away. Are you confident, clear, and comfortable with what you're doing with your money right now? I make the planning process very easy. My coach actually taught me this. We always want to look at where we're trying to get to, almost like a GPS. So we'll call that B. What are we trying to do? Where are we trying to go? And let's really define this. Let's not put limits on that. Let's dream. Tell it. All right, so we put the destination in. Well, to get directions to the destination, we must see where our current location is, right? So that's A. We're going from A to B. So value is in the comparison. Let's take a look at A. What are we doing currently? How much do we have currently? What does that plan look like? And then what happens with the value in comparison is, can we get you to your B faster? Can we bring that B closer to you? Do you even have the right vehicle that's going to get you to your B? It's all about education. And that's what this podcast is all about. We want to educate you and give you all the knowledge and tools to make you be successful. So we're going to dive right in. Let's talk about some things that I believe is not talked about enough. So we're going to start out by talking about the fact that we can't fix new world problems with old world solutions. Sometimes we just assume because everybody else is doing it, that's what we were supposed to do. Just because mom, dad, uncle, grandfather did this and it worked for them, then it's going to work for me. You know, the what's the saying? The strategies or the plan that got you out of Egypt may not get you into the promised land, right? So we have to open our mind. And I say a lot of times, you know, your mind works like a parachute. It works best when it's open. So let's just jump right into this. All right. Principle number one is how to really understand rates of return. I think rates of returns can be used to manipulate you into not really seeing a clear picture of your situation. Now, Warren Buffett, we would all agree, is a very successful man, and he has two rules for his investing. Number one rule is to not lose money, and the number two rule is don't forget the number one rule. I would say that if it's that big of a deal that he's made rules of this, that might be something that we should follow. Success leaves clues is what I've always heard. So let's start out. Pretend that either this is you or pretend that maybe this is somebody that you really care about. But what if I told you or them that I could get you a 14.84% average rate of return over the next 30 years? You probably automatically sign me up. Let's go, right? Well, let's look at that. You see, in order to create a model or a proposal, we obviously can't dictate what the future's coming. We have to use past performances to kind of create a model to give us some kind of idea of what this may look like in our particular situation. And when doing so, me included, we have to use past performances, like I just said. And in order to do that, we usually use constant rates of returns that show the average rate of return. But there needs to be education around that. You see, you need to understand that constant rates of returns is not reality. The market doesn't do 14.84% every single year. So I'm talking to you who is about to retire or who has saved up for retirement. This is who I'm talking to. All right. I want to talk to you about how fluctuating rates of returns can really impact the distribution phase of your retirement. All right. So let's talk about that. Now, I just mentioned 14.84%, and I'll tell you that is high. And some of you that are watching this are like, well, why in the world are you using that kind of number? Well, it is high, but I'm trying to make a point because 14.84% actually was the average from 1970 to 1999. All right, that was the average rates of return of the S&P 500. So put yourself in the situation. You come to me, I'm your advisor, and sometimes I get a little sarcastic because I get a little fired up on how these kind of conversations are handled. And you say, hey, I've got $1 million. Can I retire? What does my retirement look like? And let's just say that Mr. or Mrs. Advisor looks and says, well, now listen to how I ask this. What if I can get you 14.84%? You see, that's the average rate of return for 30 years. Is that fair? You cool with that? See, I'm getting you to agree with me that it's okay. I'm the specialist, right? And you're following my lead. Sure, 30 years, that seems like a sound period of time to use for an average rate of return. Okay, Mr. or Miss Jones, you have $1 million saved up. Let's see what that looks like. And we show in year one of retirement, you start taking out $100,000 to live off of. Now understand that. Follow me. because this is gonna play back to something I talk about here in a minute. $100,000 and your nest egg, your total account is $1 million. That's 10% of your nest egg, 10% of your total retirement that you're using to live off of. All right. So we start taking out $100,000 and we do that year after year after year. And remember, we're using 14.84% rate of return. Guys, in year 30, using that model, do you know that you have $15.1 million left still in your account? What? I mean, I'm making six figures in my retirement. And at the end of 30 years, I still have 15.1 million. You know, the first thing I'm asking is, hey, can I get out 250,000, right? Or why didn't you tell me this earlier? Because I could have already been retired 5, 6, maybe even 10 years ago. Because this is plenty, man. $100,000 a year, and I still have 15.1 million left over. Guys, that is status quo planning. That is a status quo approach. And I want to pull back the curtain right now and let me show you what reality looks like. You see, 1970 to 1999, again, the average was 14.84. But let's look at 1970. It was 3.99%. 1971 was 14.33%. 1972 was 18.9%, and 1973 was negative 14.79%. Now, understand what I'm telling you. It wasn't 14.84, 14.84, 14.84, 14.84. It was up and it was down, just like the market does now. It's nothing new. So this is why you have to wake up. This is why you have to take control of your finances and make sure you know all of your options. So, if we're going to use this time period that Mr. or Miss Advisor just showed you or your loved one, let's see what that really looked like. Okay, remember we had $1 million and we're going to start taking out $100,000 a year starting in 1970. Guys, would you believe me when I told you that in year 14, you have zero? I want you to think about that, guys. And I want you to think about everybody, the older people that you see at Chick-fil-A, at Walmart, people who are struggling to make ends meet. Because every day people are making a decision based off of numbers that they have seen and the confidence. Look, I was fully confident when I saw $100,000 a year and I still had 15.1 million left over in year 30. I had margin in my life. I was not worried about a thing. And then reality sets in right here to the truth. And I am completely broke in year 14. That is wake up call number one, guys. You have to understand that there is Wall Street fuzzy math out there. And you have to be educated on it. Now, I'm not saying all advisors will do this, but how can you lay your head down at night and feel like you've done right by the client? The only way you can do that, which I don't think you can, is just saying, well, I said it was average rates of returns. But when you go to a specialist, they are supposed to educate you on the good, the bad, the ugly, so you know all around what you've got going on. So that's something very, very, very important for you to understand. Now, how do we protect that? You say, well, I like to tell people, let's get your money off of the roller coaster and let's put it on an escalator. You see, people who are rich, they understand things. They understand patience, they understand time, and they understand that they must protect their assets. See, nobody wants to get rich slowly. Everybody wants to hurry up and have it like the next day, right? So they get a thrill and a rush off of the roller coaster. They like chasing that rates of return. But if you understand that a Pop-Tart will only fill you up for just a little bit, but a crock pot blessing usually is a lot better. There's a whole lot of goodness in that crock pot. versus a Pop-Tart. So you have to understand it. And once you see the math, you can understand that there are other options out there. Now, how do we combat that? What's our solution for that? Well, I like to tell people, I don't know if any of you watch or have ever gambled before or went into the casino, but you go to a traditional blackjack table and you put down $100, and let's say that you win. They give you $100 back and $100, right, from the house. So you win $100. You're 100 up. Well, let's say that you play again. You put $100 down and you lose. Well, they take your $100. All right. Now, what if there was a high roller room right upstairs that nobody knows about? Only the high rollers. Now, there's not really one of these rooms. I'm just using for example, so bear with me, right? So let's say that you put $100 down, you win. Well, this time they give you $70. Well, immediately you're like, well, that's bull crap. Downstairs, I'm getting 100. I'm getting slighted, right? Well, let's play another hand. Play another 100 down, and you lose. But this time the dealer slides that 100 back to you and says, sir, ma'am, you don't lose on this table. You see, you might give up a little bit of the upside, but you never lose. You never go backwards. And there's power in that. All right? So understanding average rates of returns is not all that it's cracked up to be. Let me give you this last example before we move on to something else. If I told you I'd get you 25% average rate of return in 2 years, you going to give me your money? Yeah, here, take it all, Chad. Well, let's say you give me $100,000. The first year we lose 50%. Now we're down to $50,000. Well, what kind of return do we have to get the next year just to get back even? It's not 50%. It's 100%. So if we go back to 3rd grade, 4th grade, I'm not sure when they taught us averages, but negative 50 plus 100, guess what? That is 25% average rate of return. And you are no more further along than the first time you met me. So that's one thing that I wanted you to take into consideration. Now, the second thing is still talking to you guys who are approaching retirement, who have your money in a nest egg, a 401k, an IRA, or what have you. How many times do you hear commercials or advisors say, hey, we got the best distribution rates in the market? Well, you might ask me, first of all, what is a distribution rate? What is that? Great question. I'm going to talk to you about why cash flow is more important than the nest egg. Because you never hear about cash flow. You never hear about, distribution. All you hear about is beating the market, rates of return, accumulation, get the nest egg. And when you get a big enough nest egg, then you can get off the hamster wheel, right? And you need to stay on the hamster wheel until I tell you that you can get off the hamster wheel, because this next nest egg of hopium is what you're working for. And you don't know what that hopium is going to provide. An investment provides cash flow. It provides income. So we're so focused on going up the mountain and chasing rates of return and saving that big nest egg that we forget in retirement we got to come down the mountain. You have contributions, you have accumulation, and you have distributions. Guys, a lot of times this is where people are really wowed and they get concerned when they hear this right here. Okay? So the traditional rule of thumb is 4% of what your nest egg is dictates your paycheck in retirement. And what does that mean, Chad? What that means is, number one, you're not going to take your nest egg around in a book bag to the stores and say, hey, yeah, these are all my groceries right here. And don't forget the chewing gum and the Snickers bar. I should have enough in my front pocket to take care of all this. No, you're not going to take all that money around. But what happens is people freely pull from that nest egg because it's there. And then once they see the size of the nest egg shrinking, then they hit the panic button. Oh, I need to do something about it. I need to get on a budget. I need to set myself up on a systematic paycheck, right? And that's when they realized that 4% is all they should have been taking out in the first place. So let's break the math down. If you have $1 million, that means that $40,000 is your pay in retirement yearly. And that's before taxes. Now, that may sound good to you. That may sound bad to you. But I hate to give you the bad news. But I'm here to give you the truth. But that's not it anymore. Because we are living longer. Morningstar did a study, and for our money to last in retirement, because we're living longer, because of health advances and medical advances, that distribution rate is 2.7% now. So you're telling me that a millionaire who saved $1 million, $27,000 is what you have to live off of that retirement account. And that's before taxes. We ain't even covered taxes yet. So think about that. Remember earlier when we showed you the proposal of the, taking money out, the $100,000? Remember, that was 10% of $1 million. Remember, I told you to remember that? Reality says that it's 2.7% of whatever you save is what your paycheck should be in order to last you in retirement. Now, what if there's strategies out there that you can get 5, 6, 7% in distribution rates? So 50, 60, 70,000 sounds a lot better than 27, 28, 29,000, right? But guys, if you don't take action, if you don't seek help and understand that you can be, remember, confident, clear, and comfortable with your money, then you're just going to keep rolling with the status quo and assuming, and it could cause you to be broke one day. And that's very scary. They did a study. I don't know what study this is. You know what? I might be making this up, but I think I heard that people are more afraid of running out of money than they are dying. So that's something to consider. All right. Tax strategies. Tax strategies. So the third thing you need to be thinking about is taxes. Are you taking advantage of all the tax strategies that are available to you? Maybe you know, maybe you don't know. Maybe you don't know all the tax strategies because the government don't want everybody to know tax strategies because maybe that would be cutting into their revenue. Number one, let me ask you a question. My name is Uncle Sam, and I want to partner with you on a little business venture, but I want you to put up all the capital. I want you to take on all the risk. And 20, 30 years down the road, by the way, I do have trillions in debt, okay, over here, but I'm pretty smart. I'm a giant. But 20, 30 years down the road, I'll tell you how much I want. I'll tell you how many shares I want. I'll tell you how much money I want from this venture. See, I'm not bashing everybody that's in that. I'm not, but you need to be aware so you can be prepared. Because you can pay money on the seed now at a tax rate that you know what it is, or you can choose to not pay taxes on the seed and decide to pay taxes on the seed and the harvest in the future. Now think about that. Pay taxes on a bag of seed or pay taxes on the seed and 20 acres of land of harvest at a tax rate we have no clue what it's going to be. Again, remember I told you, I want to share the truth with you. These are things that you can't deny, but you just don't think of them because they're not shown to you. So let's get into this right away. I want to bust up the myths surrounding life insurance and annuities. You see, when I talked earlier, I said that, possibly get you 5 to 6 to 7% on the distribution rates. That's $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. Remember that? You see, that one great way of doing that is using an annuity. Now, What have you heard about annuities? You've heard things about annuities because people only think of annuities of one thing, and that's annuitizing an annuity. What does that mean, Chad? What does that mean? That means if you save $500,000 and they gave you $50,000 for the rest of your life, but you only live 3 years, that means you only got $150,000 and the company keeps the rest. That's annuitizing an annuity. I've never annuitized an annuity ever. And here's another thing. Because annuities are used and oftentimes a better option for people so they don't have to worry about running out of money, that money comes off of assets under management. It is no longer assets that can be creating income for the financial industry. So I wonder why the hate for annuities is so in your face. And let's talk about life insurance as well while we're on this subject. Life insurance, special designed insurance contracts, that's what we call them, SDICs. Special designed insurance contracts are absolutely some of the most powerful financial instruments out there. Now, a little bit later on, I'm going to share with you just who's taking advantage of these. I know that I actually worked in putting some of these plans together, and people were borrowing from the bank to put premiums into these special design insurance contracts. You see, I've worked with some NFL team football owners, the CFO of one of the top 3 retailers in the world. I put together or took part in putting together a plan for them. They were not my clients. I actually serviced and supported advisors across the country who had ultra wealthy clients. And this is what they were doing. And I'm going to share with you who else is doing that too. But think about this. Think about going into a store. I like to use stories every once in a while. I like to paint pictures. You go into a store and you get a candy bar. Let's say Snickers is your favorite candy bar. But let's say this month that they had a different wrapper on that candy bar, and it was lime green or something like that. And you're just so focused on, man, they put too much money into these graphics. I know they're charging me for the ink. They're charging me for all this extra color, and you're complaining about that wrapper. And you go to the cashier and you're like, hey, don't charge me extra for this wrapper. I like the traditional better. So let me tell you something. The wrapper is necessary to protect the candy bar, to keep people's nappy hands off of it, to keep it fresh. You got to have a wrapper around the candy bar. If you want market protection, if you want access to your money, if you want to hedge against longevity, if you want to use this to be your own bank, which we'll cover later on, it's life insurance. We build an account and we put a life insurance wrapper around it, and we show you how it works. And sometimes you come out 2, 3, 4 times better. And why are the financial titans using this very tool for themselves and their families as a consumer, but not sharing it in their business? Maybe because it takes assets off the platform in which they earn money off of. So let's go into just a little bit about who uses this. Just people want logic, right? People want to understand who else is doing this. Well, let's take Bank of America. Bank of America has at one point in time had 5,500 branches, and they own the second largest skyscraper in Manhattan. The total of all of that real estate is just over $10 billion. They have $20.3 billion with a B in cash value, life insurance, and annuities. So see, we're coming in and we're actually putting money in, and it's going into their vault, right? We think. But they're putting all their cash into special designed insurance contracts. And I'll do an episode on that later on to dive deeper on what they do, how they use it. But you got to understand, when you hear the hate, what's the hate coming from? Is it from people who are losing out on opportunities? All right. Who else is doing it? A lot of CEOs, Bank of America, AT&T, Coca-Cola, they all have SDICs. Since we're talking about Bank of America, let's talk about Ken Lewis, the former CEO of Bank of America. $53 million he has in an SDIC, and he is getting $3.5 million tax-free every single solitary year in retirement. Now, why is that? Well, I believe it's got something to do with taxes. But here's another thing. Ken Lewis, president of Bank of America, former president of Bank of America owns Merrill Lynch, one of the largest wealth management firms out there. Why is money not coming out of that? Things that make you go, All right, lastly, before we wrap up, this is huge. This is where I usually start with people who are truly coming to me and they're wanting to understand, how can I grow my wealth? How can I get started? Because remember, I work with people that have money, and we got some very, very, very high profile tax strategies and wealth building strategies that are available to those folks. Being with Black Diamond Money Moves, Black Diamond being from the ski slopes, advanced strategies, right? Shoot, we've got the single black diamond, we've got the double black diamond, and man, we've even got the triple black diamond. But let's start at the single black diamond, okay? Let's start right there. The question that I want to ask you is, are you paying interest or are you earning interest? And when I ask people, do you have any debt? Immediately they say, well, I just got a house payment, I got my house and cars. I'm really not in debt. I understand that we're tempted to kind of separate our debt to good, better, best, or bad, or what have you. But let me just educate you on debt a little bit, okay? So let's talk about this. And understand me when I tell you this, that I am not bashing anybody with debt. I have debt. I have a mortgage. But I am aware and I am prepared and I am taking action to eliminate that. So that's the deal. Once you have all this knowledge, it's up to you to execute. Right? So, are you paying interest or are you earning interest? Money owed versus money saved. If we could teach you how to compound your money for you, would you like to know, instead of compounding it for the bank? You see, with payments, whether it's a house payment, credit card payment, car payment, what have you, you've got interest and you have the principal. Now, what we're tempted to do is we want to focus on that APR. And I like to, I get a little sarcastic here, the APR, right? APR. What is the APR? You've all seen it. It's on the back of your loan agreement or what have you. If you have a credit card, it's 13.99 to 24.99. If you have a house, maybe it's 3%, 4%. Now it's a little bit higher, right? But we keep focused on the APR. And that APR is something that we're proud of. Annual percentage rate. You know what APR is? All potential reduced. That's the Chad Free definition of it. You say, well, all right, I want to know more. Let me ask you a question. Can you go to the grocery store and hold out your hand and say, look, I got an APR of 4%. Can you buy anything with an APR? An APR is just a number. Now, what I want to show you is the effective interest cost. And when you understand the math, you're going to realize that the effective interest cost is working against you when it comes to saving money. You hear things all the time of death and taxes are the two only certain things, right, in this life. Well, we can add and say debt and taxes are two certain things that slow you down in your wealth building process. So I want to use a very simple illustration here. Let's say that you have a $100,000 mortgage. Okay? Not many of us have just a $100,000 mortgage, but let's keep it real. Let's keep it simple. I'm a simple person. I want you to digest this. And you've got a 30-year mortgage, and it's a 4% APR. In these times, 4% is great, right? 4% APR, $100,000. Now, what's the effective interest cost on that? I promise you it's not 4%. So understand this math. If you don't get anything out of what we talked about today, if you're beginning to build your wealth process, your wealth building process, and you truly want to save money, you need to understand this math right here. A 30-year mortgage at $100,000 at 4% APR, the monthly payment is $477. The interest of that payment is $199. You like percentage rates? Here's one for you. That's 41.8% that you're losing. 41%. You don't realize a 4% APR until the 349th month. Now, I want you to visualize that right now. Visualize a bucket, okay? And you're putting your retirement away in this bucket, right? And you are so focused on getting that 7% rate of return or that 10% rate of return in that bucket. And you're so focused in stashing all this money away, and you're looking at the top of the bucket, and man, I'm doing such a good job, but you've never looked underneath that bucket and saw that there's a hole this big at the bottom of that bucket to the tune of 42% that's coming right out the bottom, just in interest and just on that one account. So, I want to ask you a question. I've heard a lot of billionaires talk, and they say, nail it before you scale it. Nail it before you scale it. And they're talking about businesses. They're talking about finances. Plug the holes. Let's fix what we have. Remember, we're A. We need to fix that. And the fastest way to get from A to B is to quit chasing rates of returns, and let's start plugging the holes where we're losing money, the lost dollars. And that's what we do. When your money compounds for you, it's always better than when it's compounding for somebody else. So I'm going to leave you with this one last thing. Actually, I got two more things. But maybe that $100,000 illustration was too little. So a real life situation. Somebody had $297,000 mortgage, 3.2% APR. Great APR, right? These percentage rates, man, great APR. The payment on that's $1,840 a month. The interest on that is $792. $792 is coming right out the bottom of the bucket, and is compounding in somebody else's favor and not in your favor. So there. Think about that. Where are you earning 43%, 42% on your investments? The question's simple. It's just math. And we happen to be really good at math here. But once you have control, once you're confident, and once you are comfortable with what your money is doing for you, then that will give you margin. Then you will not be a slave to your money, and you can be present with your family. Then you can understand that, you know what, I am created on purpose for a purpose, and I do need to step into the game and quit hanging out on the sidelines, hoping some kind of leftover shake out in my favor. You're called to get in the game, and when you don't get in the game, that means that you're robbing the world of what God gave you to do. And money is one of the biggest things that prevent people from ever pursuing their purpose. And that's where I come in. That's where I want to disrupt the status quo and show you how you can live on purpose with a purpose. Today has been the Wealth Revolution podcast. I hope that you got something out of it. Feel free to reach out to me if I can help you. And until next time, you're created on purpose for a purpose.